Fashion Feed. My name's Elizabeth and I'm a fashion brand consultant working with independent brands I work with them on everything really with regards to marketing, manufacturing, sourcing, design and trends. And I've only been doing it since last September and I've kind of thrown myself head in. I started a Facebook group, I've started a podcast, and I'm kind of just learning as I go, but also spreading knowledge wherever I go and taking you along with me for the ride and absolutely loving it. So I just wanted to do a little mini intro as we're almost halfway through the season. And episode 5 is with Meg Pirie. Meg runs a slow fashion advocacy business and she's an eco-conscious stylist, writer, designer and workshop leader in Wales. After having worked for Gucci and giving birth to her daughter India, her outlook on the fashion industry completely changed for the better. We found each other on Instagram as we both talk about slow fashion regularly, and I shared an image from Ink Thimble which Meg loved and we got chatting. She's the perfect guest to have on the podcast because she's worked in lots of different areas of the fashion industry, so is in the perfect position to be able to push it forward in a brand new direction. In this episode, we break down a lot of jargon that's being thrown about at the moment, so what the differences are between linear fashion and circular, the differences between ethical and sustainable fashion, and then also the differences between eco-fashion and vegan. We also cover is sustainable fashion for the wealthy, some projects that Meg's working on from clothes swap parties and mending workshops, animal cruelty in the fashion industry, and just a note to say we do discuss some details of animal cruelty within the episode if you're sensitive to the topic, and why 2019 is going to be the year of water preservation. So last year it was all about plastic, this year it's going to be all about water, and within that, there's some really exciting new fabrics that are being developed that are super kind to the planet. So if you're interested in all of those things, then keep on listening. And here is the interview with Meg.
Hi, Meg. Welcome to the Fashion Feed. Let's start by you telling us a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Cool. So I live up in North Wales, and I run a slow fashion advocacy business up here. So that sort of incorporates styling, writing, a bit of art direction, consulting and also workshops.
Yeah. You're a multi-hyphen woman.
I am. I'm one of those people.
And how did you get into the industry? Like, let's go way back to the beginning and start with like what you studied.
Sure. So I actually studied communications initially and worked for a few communications agencies. And during that time, I was always styling. I've always had a love of fashion, and I suppose I got into fashion initially for the art side of it. I've always been a massive fan of designers like Alexander McQueen, and like when fashion was sort of disrupted, and all the new sort of I suppose styles and cuts and everything sort of came in, like was just an amazing time. And I think that's sort of where I sort of started. I've worked for very small designers and seen how that all works, and also a luxury house. I worked for Gucci for a while. And that's when I sort of realised what a massive, I guess, problem the fashion industry sort of was in. To be honest.
What did you do?
Yeah. I managed one of their stores, but through the training and stuff, because I was vegetarian for years and not vegan at the time when I worked for Gucci, but I don't think I'd ever really associated, for example, how leather was actually made into shoes, and I don't think I even sort of, my thought process wasn't really there. And so to watch all the training and to go through all that training and actually realise, one, how everything's produced and like it's not completely sustainable, and and animals do suffer, and like it was actually quite a sort of a crazy time.
Really eye-opening.
Yeah.
And so where did you go from there?
after that, I went back into communications for a while. I actually got a bit sort of down on the fashion industry, and then I took some time off to have my little girl, and that's when I actually started. That was sort of my little aha moment of I need to do something that's a little bit more meaningful. And I think having a child as well, you're made to be a little bit more mindful, like through pregnancy, through, all of that process. Yeah, so I think that's where
I guess it's like the planet. You need to look after the planet for her.
Well, exactly. It's not just you anymore. It's like you're actually raising another little person, to bring them into the world, and then actually thinking, oh my God, it's screwed. Like, what can I do to make a difference? So that's sort of how my, I suppose, passion about raising awareness in slow fashion and the vegan space sort of kicked off, really.
I think it's interesting the way trends move. Like, I'm writing a trend report at the moment, and somebody said to me before that trends always start with food, and then they move into fashion, and then they move into homewares, and then it kind of starts again. So I don't think it's a coincidence that there's a vegan movement and now everyone's talking about sustainable fashion. There's definitely an obvious link between the two, do you think?
Absolutely. In fact, something I was thinking about the other day is I think a lot of people don't actually think about fashion and clothing from farm to like wardrobe, whereas it's quite a common term to go, hey, from farm to table, but actually like from farm to like, shop front, in the store or in your actual wardrobe is something that isn't talked about enough, like, because we've got this linear fashion system at the moment of like take, make, dispose, that we're actually trying to change. But, taking raw materials, which are actually finite resources, and then making them and then disposing of them just as fast, isn't working. And I think you're right, the food industry is addressing that quite well at the moment, but it's something that the fashion industry actually has to really, really get on top of.
Yeah, so I remember even in the 80s and like early 90s that like fair trade bananas and fair trade chocolate was about. And I mean, it was very niche and it was very expensive, but it was there. But that was sort of 20, 30 years ago, and only now is it still like slowly becoming mainstream and it's still considered a luxury. So I think we're only at the very beginning with fashion, and it'll be really interesting to see where it goes from here, because I think it is still considered something for the wealthy, and it annoys me sometimes because even shopping vintage or shopping on eBay can be sustainable.
Oh, absolutely. Like, it is definitely accessible. It's more accessible now than ever, and I think that's probably where the biggest issues have probably sort of kicked into play, because it is so readily accessible, and everybody can sort of have a new look. Like, you can either do that as, like, like you said, I'm a real advocate for like eBay and vintage shopping and charity shopping and stuff like that.
And
but I mean
as well.
Oh, absolutely, Depop. Then there's the net-a-porter of like, for example, like Vestiaire, like, which is a bit like net-a-porter, like where you can actually go on and buy labels that are all like, secondhand. There's a lot of really good vintage, like, if you didn't necessarily want to go into your local charity shop, there's a ton of different ways of going about it, for sure.
Yeah, I think it's interesting the way like service-based businesses and like even magazines, they're all kind of morphing it into retail businesses now. Like, I noticed the other day, this is slightly off topic, but like Marie Claire has started a makeup brand, and it's and Hypnobiosis combining with Prada, and it's just like there's no rules anymore in retail. I guess that's what I mean. Like, you can do anything, and that's what makes it exciting, that the rules are kind of being thrown out the window when it comes to shopping, and it's interesting the way things are going to go from here.
Yeah, I'd say it's a massive opportunity. I mean, I could literally relay off so many facts, you know what I mean, like about why it's not working. But if we actually look at it as more of a half glass full sort of way, I suppose, there are so many opportunities to make positive changes and make a difference, I think, which is exciting. And I think probably a little bit more open now than we've ever been at actually making that happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So how do you spend your day? Like, tell us, or maybe like a week, because I know as a freelancer every day is different, but what kind of things do you get up to make a change?
So I run around after my little girl, obviously.
Yes.
I write. I contribute regularly to a amazing vegan magazine called Filter, which is an online magazine.
Mm-hmm.
I am about to start running along to all the markets, the vegan markets up north, up here, and giving talks on vegan and sustainable options, how we move forward, all the things that we can sort of do to support that. Or I might be having a meeting with somebody about, implementing a change. At the moment, I'm hoping to start some clothing swaps up here. So that's my next big
I think
project.
A few of them. Yeah, they're
cool.
good,
aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to even meet new people as well. It's like a networking, but it's a very relaxed way of networking to expand your group of people and people who are interested in the same things as you as well.
I would agree. I think as well, it opens up like a whole, so my biggest focus is sort of pulling the community together at the moment, and that's one of my really big focuses. So this is going to be a nice project to sort of get my teeth stuck into, but that's sort of the next project.
So apart from the clothes swap parties, how else are you looking to grow the community that you're working in?
So I'm running regular mending workshops at the moment, which is a fantastic way of supporting a circular fashion economy. They're really amazing, actually. I didn't quite know how they'd go up here, but they've gone so well that I'm going to be doing one in Chester shortly as well.
Okay.
But they're just...
And how did they go? So would somebody turn up with like a broken pair of jeans, for example?
Yeah, so the first few ones that we sort of ran were quite open, where you could bring a piece of denim, and we were just showing people how to basically either mend or create something a little bit more visual on their denim jeans through Japanese-inspired techniques like Boro and Sashiko. And then Alana, who I work with, they're different techniques, embroidery techniques, and it's sort of, instead of having invisible mending, it's showing it on, through embroidery. So if you've got a hole, actually showcasing a beautiful embroidery piece on that instead of hiding it.
I think they do that pottery as well, don't they? They paint it gold.
Yeah, sorry. Yeah, no, they totally do. Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, I've got my eye on something actually, but I love it so much.
Yeah.
Anything Japanese is phenomenal at the moment, I think. So, and then I run it with a textile artist called Alana. She's amazing. She is a real fan of blackwork embroidery too, which is, quite I suppose, really sort of old techniques, but, really like trying to use them in modern ways, which I really love. So, that's what we've been up to. But they've been going ever so well, and we've been gaining numbers every week. So it's been really cool, actually.
I think that was one of the first conversations we had, because I shared something about like mending denim or something, and you're like, where is this? That's so pretty. And then it started from there. Yeah. And another thing, I was reading about a trend report about a year ago saying these make do and mend workshops were really booming in Hong Kong. And I was just saying to my friend, I was like, these are going to be big, these are going to be massive, this is the new thing. And she was like, I just can't see it. And I was like, no, trust me. And now I can start seeing them like dripping through. If they weren't big in Hong Kong, they kind of got the idea from Japan. And it's always interesting how trends do come over from the Far East. like if you go inspiration shopping out there, I know like I went out to Korea about 2 years ago, and then it's only this year that you started seeing the same trends coming through in England. Like they're just so far ahead.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I'm quite into trend forecasting as well, like looking at things. And I saw it, I saw this sort of thing, was similar to you actually, sort of movement beginning, because there's been mending workshops in Brighton for quite a while, and, you know, like it is something new up here, but it's only going to gain traction now, I think, which is awesome.
Yeah, because when you're saying about the linear fashion and changing that to circular fashion, how would you describe those two concepts?
Yes. So I suppose a linear fashion system is sort of the take, make, dispose. So taking the raw materials, making and turning them into, you know, garments that we wear every day, and then it's the dispose, which is sort of, you know, it can be sort of £140 million worth of clothing last year, which actually ends up in landfill, and that's just in the UK.
Was it, I read something like 95% of things that end up in landfill could be recycled or reused or composted, or and I was just like, oh my goodness. That's so
I know. It's such a minefield. But then at the same time, I think with circular fashion at the moment, probably not enough emphasis at the moment on like the design at the beginning of a product's life cycle. Like we're talking so much at the moment about, you know, landfill and waste and, you know, like disposing of like garments. But that's not necessarily the only issue. I think for me as well, like looking at a design, like the design sort of process from the beginning is actually super, super interesting. If we're sort of choosing compassion and empathy for everything at the beginning, then I suppose how does that look moving forward? Like that can only be positive, I think.
So for any designers that might be listening, what kind of tips would you give for them to think about at that beginning stage?
Well, I got invited to one of Vivienne Westwood's evenings recently, and I had a chance to speak to her head designer, and it was super interesting to talk to her because she said that one of the biggest things they're conscious of is waste, and that starts at sort of the very, very beginning of even choosing the fabric, you know, who is going to work for them. It comes down to cutting patterns, you know, in a certain way so that there's minimal waste. I mean, so much that you can actually look at the beginning. I think empowering yourself.
Like prints as well. You know, if you have a one-way print, try and make it a two-way print. So if it's like, I don't know, a palm print, and they're all facing up, have one facing up and one facing down, so that you can cut it both ways, and then it looks okay if you cut one piece upwards and one piece downwards.
Yeah,
if that makes sense. I'm doing all these hand movements. And then
I know.
It.
I was just twiddling my paper round because I know what you mean.
Yeah, and looking at like different ways of cutting the fabric to make sure you're using it to the best of its abilities. And then also, like, I guess using the scrap fabrics for other things, you know, like shoelaces or scrunchies or tiny things.
Yes, and I think also looking at it in terms of, like, if people return this, how do we, like, I think that should be a model. Like, people should actually be able to return garments to the place they bought them, for example. How do we regenerate these back into the system to actually reproduce and actually create new items? I think that would be a really positive way of looking at it. But it's not really happening at the moment, but I think it will.
Yeah, and just stepping them back and then sort of breaking those fibres down. So if it was a 100% cotton t-shirt, that's a lot easier than a poly viscose elastane t-shirt or something.
Exactly.
So even if they've started with like single fibre clothes, that could be a start.
Yes, yeah. Choosing empathy, like not just for materials and nature and the environment and animals, but also for workers. You know, there's so much you can do at the beginning before you even start, like the planning. I think that's what's probably been missing, is the fact that everything had to be turned around so quickly that everybody sort of lost sight of like how that, you know, is going to move forward.
Yeah.
And what implications that would have. Yeah.
That's definitely one of the reasons I kind of stepped away from corporate fashion, because you just go into these factories and it's moving so quickly, and it's like, this is sold really well, what's next? And it's like, oh, okay, can't we just celebrate this for a minute? You know, and it's like, no, next. And it's that kind of gives you heart palpitations just thinking about it. And it's just, I don't know, it just didn't sit well with me at all. It's so unnecessary.
I can completely relate to that. Yeah. It's also seeing like the level of, I suppose, greed. It's greed, really, isn't it? If you think about it, it's sort of, it's that, hey, we did so well, we've got to do that again because we need to make profit, like this amount of profit, and you know, it's too much focus on that. Personally, is my opinion.
The idea of like celebrities wearing things more than once as well. And I'm not the biggest fan of her, I guess, but like Kate, Wilson Kate, she does wear things more than once, you know, and gets patched more than once. And I think that's quite nice for somebody at that level to be wearing things multiple times. I think if other celebs or influential people could do that, that would be nice for the younger generation to see, like, it's okay to wear your clothes more than once, you know. Like, I'm in the era of pre-Facebook and Instagram that you could get away with wearing your outfit 2 or 3 times with different friendships.
Yeah, I was the same.
Yeah, now that's come along, it's like, once it came along, it was like, no, it's ruined everything. And but it's like, you need to go back to where we were before, and it's like, no, it doesn't matter if you've worn it once or twice. In fact, it's like an excuse to get creative as well. Like, how can you make that outfit look different yourself by using different accessories or makeup or hair?
Well, I've actually just written a piece just about this, actually, like for Builder magazine, because I was saying that I'd got invited to a wedding, and I was really casual about what to wear. I was just going to wear a dress I'd already worn to the last wedding and just style it differently. Because I love styling, obviously. And it got to like a week before the event, and even me, like, I run like a slow fashion advocacy business, like I'm only about buying what you need, and I felt such a societal pressure to like have something new or look different, which is so, you know, and I wonder how many of us actually, like, we've got so much work to do on ourselves to actually break such a long time of like habitual behaviour, haven't we? Like, even me, like, I was literally like walking past charity shops going, oh my god, like, I need to look, you know, like, I just want to
like, if I buy it from here, is that okay? I had the exact same thing in the wedding pre-bank holiday, and I was just like rummaging around in the garage trying to find something, and ended up just sort of sat in my suitcase in the garage like, I've got nothing to wear.
I know.
Really dramatic, obviously. And then I was just like, get a grip of yourself, like, it's one night, you'll look fine, just do your hair, make extra effort in other areas to make yourself feel good. No, I agree. I actually, like, it's going to make me sound so stupid, I actually got my nose pierced. Oh, wow.
And it worked, because I was like, I wanted it done for about 2 years, 3 years, and I just thought, you know what, I've wanted it for so long, it's something that I'm going to keep in for a long time, like, that will instantly have a different look to, like, my look. So probably sound like the most super shallow human in the world now, but I'm only human like everybody else. I'm like,
only if you wanted it done. I think if you didn't want it done in the first place, that would be quite extreme, but it's like something you wanted to do. So I think that's what I mean, is like getting creative with other ways. Like, it doesn't have to be a new dress.
That might be a little bit too creative, but exactly, like styling with a different jacket, or you know, putting on a different pair of shoes with it, belting something, I don't know, different earrings. I mean, I'm sure, like, there are so many different ways of, like, wearing, you know, I've had that so many times as well from clients. Yeah, literally, perplexed as to what to wear, but a wardrobe full of options. So
yeah,
it's a common
I think sometimes
issue.
I don't know if you find this, like, the quicker I get ready, the more creative I can be sometimes. It's like, oh, I don't know, I'll just wear this. I normally wear this grey jumper with this pair of jeans. But sometimes I'll be like, oh my God, I've got to get ready really quickly. And I'll just grab things. I'm like, oh, this looks quite nice actually. I wouldn't have thought to put it together if I'd overthought it. So sometimes it's quite good to just like throw all your clothes on the floor and like, I don't know, if everything's in the same place all the time, like even just mixing your wardrobe up, how you keep things can make a difference. Like, oh, I've seen this dress is now next to this jumper, which it wasn't before, and it looks pretty cool.
Yeah, or rotating. I mean, rotating garments is like a really great way of doing it. I do that really often. I have like a rack next to my bed actually that I put 5 pieces that I might not have worn in a while on there at the beginning of the week. And then I'll put some other things, away. And then it makes me wear them because they're available. And then, that actually keeps things sort of moving.
Yeah, and I love getting stuff out of the loft. And you're like, oh my God, I forgot I had this. This is so fun. And then it's like getting something new.
Yeah, well, exactly. It's another way. It's just another way of sort of, I suppose, supporting a circular economy because you're not actually buying anything new. You're keeping what you've got. You're restyling. The other thing that's gaining a bit of traction at the minute in the UK, it's super popular in the States, but is the renting model, kind of like the Airbnb.
I've heard somebody else talk about this. Yeah, what kind of like how would that work if somebody wanted to think about trying it?
So you can basically, if you've got a wedding, for example, you can hop online and actually look for an outfit for a wedding, or you might have like another sort of event and you don't actually want to own the clothes, or you don't have enough money to buy something new. They do it really well in the States as well with like handbags, because of the accessory market is, as you'd know, is huge. So people were spending far too much, and that's a lovely way of sort of, renting a bag for X amount of time and then, sending it back in and, it just keeps it moving, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, and it just keeps it fresh all the time. So there's a lot of different words being used at the moment with ethical, sustainable, vegan, eco, recycled, organic. The list is never ending, it seems, to somebody who might find that quite overwhelming. I think the main two, I'd say, would be ethical and sustainable. And how would you describe the differences between those two things?
It's a really good question. I think they're being used a little bit too much at the moment in the wrong context, and they've become a bit of a buzzword. Everybody's sort of using them without really knowing what they're about.
Yeah.
I would define ethical really. It would mean something different to each person, but ethical to me would be looking at things quite mindfully in terms of environment, human rights, but also for me personally, animals. So that's where I see a little bit of disparity sometimes. Like people can look at it from a social point of view and environmental. For me, animals come into that as well. So it's using products that are environmentally friendly and sound, sourcing products, ensuring they're manufactured where people are paid a living wage and there aren't, that no workers sort of exploited. Perhaps there's no, child labour or inhumane working conditions. And that to me also opens up for animals in that sense.
Yeah.
And then sustainable. So if we think of the word sustainable, the best way I find of remembering it is to sustain something. It's looking at what we're going to sustain and sustain, to sustain, for example, the environment, workers' rights, labour, gender inequality, animals, like for me, that's the best way of sort of thinking about it.
And it goes back to using those finite materials as well, and looking at ways of using infinite materials, or infinite in the best ways we can see for the foreseeable future. And that kind of leads on to as well the differences between eco and vegan, because I think a lot of people, if it says like, I guess 100% cotton t-shirt is vegan, but then looking at the differences between leather and vegan leather, people just kind of assume the alternative would be plastic, but that's not always the case, is it?
No, absolutely not. I think, for example, it's quite a misunderstood sort of term, I suppose. Like, you're right, sort of T-shirts can be 100% cotton, they can also be eco, they can also be this. And that's, I think there's too many words at the moment being thrown around. So when you think of vegan leather, there's still this sort of stigma that it's PU leather, it's shiny, it's when it goes, you know, when you're done with it, it's where's it going to go, you know, how are we going to break it down, it's made from plastic, you know, which is, you know, a lot of the PU is actually made from, like, well, it is made from oil, like, you know, it's just horrible. And so people have got this idea in their heads, and I hear it all the time, you know, leather's actually more ethical, or leather's actually more sustainable for the planet. But it's really misunderstood, you're right. I mean, what I didn't realise until I actually went vegan was that more animals are actually killed for their skin than their flesh. It's not actually a byproduct. Yeah. Yeah, so India is one of the largest manufacturers of leather. And because they consider cows quite sacred, for example, because of their Hindu faith, they're often, you know, forced to make these unbearable trips over the border. And once they're actually, you know, almost dead on arrival, then they're often killed quite brutally. And then even if you sort of take that side of it away, the hides are soaked then in toxic chemicals. They've done research, they've actually seen children do them with bare feet, a little bit like, you know, when you would make wine and, you know, you see videos of people actually with their feet, you know, with pressing the grapes. Children, you know, in some factories are doing that, and it's having catastrophic sort of effects on their health. You know, and then it's dumped into waterways, which, I mean, everybody's now talking about. You know,
I read that
massive effects on the planet.
2018 was the year of plastic, and 2019 is going to be the year of water. It's going to be the new kind of, not buzzword, not because it's important, but that's what everyone will start talking about. Yeah, no, I would completely agree with that. Like, it's massive. You've only got to watch, like, I don't know, a really good documentary actually, if you want to get into it a little bit more and actually find out a little bit more about it, is Plastic Oceans is a really good one. Have you seen that? No, I'll link to it then.
Yeah, that's a nice one.
Because
if you just because you're speaking about water there, but yeah, that's a really nice one to start you off, because it's actually it kind of shows how much plastic is in circulation, like just what you said. So, but it is an exciting time. Like, I don't want to be
all doom and gloom.
Doom and gloom. No, I don't. I really try, and I do have little rants. I can't help it. But it is an exciting.
It's good to be passionate.
Yeah, I am passionate. It is exciting though to be a vegan in this time, because there's so many amazing new fabrics being created, I suppose, with a circular economy in mind too. Like apple leather is quite a cool one. It's made from the waste from the apple juice industry.
Wow.
Which last year, I think, just off the top of my head, is it Lucky Nelly is a brand. They created these beautiful bags, and they're all 100% vegan, and they're biodegradable. And I mean, that's the sort of fashion that is pretty awesome, I think. And that's kind of, I suppose, what we should all be looking at and pioneering. And
So what would your advice be? Say there's a lot of fashion brands who are listening to this, or just generally brands who are producing product. What would your advice be to those people who want to be a little bit more ethical or sustainable or kinder to the planet? I guess, where would you start?
It's a really good question on where to start. I mean, because it is such a minefield. Personally, I think it comes down to finding out what matters to you and using it as a driving force to change things. So I think for some people it will be a social standpoint. So, just the sheer fact that there's 24 million people in modern day slavery at the moment in the fashion industry, that's a massive number. That's something that people can actually look at, or looking at the, Rana Plaza disaster is actually a good one to look at because it opens up a whole new perspective.
Yeah.
Then for some others, it will be safeguarding the planet. So mine's a bit of a mixture of all of them, actually. But doing a bit of research into like biodiversity loss, or our levels of consumption, or climate change, or how like you said, resources aren't actually infinite, they're actually finite, and how we actually go about that. Or even looking at animals and their suffering. Like you can hop over to PETA is a good one. They've got a wealth of knowledge there. So I think it's a hard one because
that's where your moral compass stands.
Yeah, and I think it's about actually stopping and putting a pause on things and figuring that out before anybody does anything next, and that for a lot of brands is unrealistic, but if you've got that option, it's well worth it. It's about being a little bit, because we talk about mindfulness so much, don't we? Like all the time, that's a massive buzzword too, but we're not practicing mindfulness in other areas like at work or, and I think it is actually about getting back to a bit of that. And
I guess it's like you say, when it's not easy to be doing this, so you need to be passionate about it to carry on doing it, and day in, day out when all the problems arise. If you don't really care about what you're doing, if you're really passionate about animals, but actually what you're trying to do is more about the planet, it doesn't make sense. Like there'll be no driving force behind your actions. So exactly. I think that's a really good point to start with what you believe in, to use that energy into something positive.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's sort of where I really carefully and very slowly started Indie M, the concept store. I was toying with it for a while because I do support only buying secondhand, and that's mainly where my sort of values lie. Like, why are we even buying any new products when there's just so much already in circulation? It doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there is still a need for vegan children's shoes. So there's not that many in the UK at all. Like when I was quite shocked when I actually went to buy India a pair of shoes and couldn't really buy her a pair that was vegan, that were supportive. And so I mean, there are brands exist because there's a need for them.
Yeah.
So yeah,
they're
the most
working towards something bigger. Yeah. Rather than just like pumping products out, there's a purpose behind it.
If there's a purpose and it's been thought out and there are values and there are initiatives in place, then I think that's a super positive thing, and I think that can only be positive. But if you're right, if it's the mass consumption that's the biggest problem. So yeah, that's kind of the big one for me at the moment. But yeah, I suppose it's hopefully that sort of answered.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, that's fine.
And then if people wanted to have a look at the shoes or wanted to get in touch with you or work with you, how would they kind of go about doing that?
So you can hop over to indiam.co.uk. That's the concept store, or you can hop over to megpirie.stylist. And you'll link those at the bottom, won't you? But
I will.
Yeah, they're just great ways of getting in touch. And even if you want to ask me a question on Instagram, or I'm always a wealth of knowledge, so anything. I love sharing, so any question, big or small, I would love to answer. So yeah, I'd love to hear from people.
Okay, thank you so much. I've learnt so much. I now want to start Googling everything about all these topics and learn more. Meg's got a very beautiful Instagram feed, so have a look at that. Well, thanks for sharing all your knowledge with us, and I will keep in touch with you on Instagram, I'm sure.
Okay, sounds brilliant.
See you then.
See you later. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you so much for listening to the interview with Meg. Everything we discussed is in the show notes, so if you want to find out more about anything we discussed, the links are below. If you have an idea for an ethical or sustainable fashion brand and want to make it a reality, or perhaps you've started and want to talk to somebody about taking it to the next level, then click the links below to contact me. I'm so passionate about helping independent brands succeed and thrive within the fashion industry, and especially within the sustainable space, because it's just the way forward. So it's easier to start now than try and work retrospectively later on down the line. If you enjoyed the episode and want to keep up to date with the fashion feed, just hit the subscribe button, and you may already be subscribed to this podcast, and if so, huge thank you. It's totally free and just means it will automatically land into your podcast inbox every night. And perhaps you know somebody that would really enjoy listening to this episode, so it would be amazing if you could send it over to them as well by clicking the share button or just screenshotting. But that really is the way to help my podcast get heard by other people, by lovely people like you sharing it with friends and family. So thanks again for listening, and I will see you next time for episode 6.